sometimes the anticipation of a travel can be as enjoyable and exciting as the travel itself. The preparations, the kind of excitement that you go through days or even weeks leading up to the travel can be quite exhilarating. And even before we got onto that plane from India, we knew that the country we were about to visit was going to be about its people more than anything else. A dear friend of mine, an ex-bureaucrat who had a long stint with the United Nations, had worked in Cambodia for a few years, and a wonderful book written by him had given me an in-depth insight into the recent history and the psyche of the country, and I was really looking forward to being there and experiencing it myself. So we flew into Phnom Penh, the capital city of Cambodia. It's much easier to say Phnom Penh than to write it because the spelling can be quite tricky. And this is what greeted us: a chill beer. And a much needed one. It was a pretty long journey. There's no direct flight from Chennai to Phnom Penh, so we had to fly into a different country, be there for quite some time, waiting for the connecting flight. So it's quite a tiring journey, and it was such a welcome drink, literally. The welcome drink was really welcome. And Phnom Penh, I found Phnom Penh like any other Southeast Asian city that I had visited. It may not quite have the pace or the kind of affluence which a city like a Bangkok would have, but there were a lot of similarities, a lot of common factors. Tuk-tuk for one. I love tuk-tuk rides, so every time I get an opportunity to take a tuk-tuk ride, I never miss out on that. Tuk-tuk was one. The kind of buildings that you'll get to see in terms of the temples and the palaces, they're very, very similar. So something that's quite common for many of these cities in that region. And another one is the night market, the buzzing night market. The markets come alive at night. There's a lot of life and buzz around it. So that's another one. The day one was more of a picnic mood, but things were about to change on day two. On day two, I took a tuk-tuk. I hired a tuk-tuk and went to a place which is about 18 kilometers away from the capital city. And it's called the Chong Ek. I'm not too sure if I'm getting the pronunciation right, but Chong Ek Genocidal Center. We are at the gate of it, and I'm going to leave you there because why I'm there, for that I need to digress a bit and tell you a bit about Cambodia and its history and what makes it very, very, very special and touching. Cambodia as a country never experienced political stability. There were a lot of political issues and instability. In 1975, the Communist Party of Cambodia took charge of the country. They assumed power, and the leader of the Communist Party of Cambodia was a crackpot called Pol Pot. And I tell you why I said crackpot. The idea of the Communist Party of Cambodia was to push Cambodia towards an entirely self-sufficient agrarian socialist society, which was next to impossible. And they were inspired, assisted, supported and funded by China, by the Chinese Communist Party under the leadership of Mao Zedong. So Mao was the main influencer, and 90% of the aid for the Communist Party of Cambodia, which was also known as the Khmer Rouge, was funded by the Chinese. To fulfill its goals, the Khmer Rouge emptied the cities and forced Cambodians to relocate to labor camps in the countryside. And there were mass executions, forced labor, physical abuse, malnutrition, and diseases were rampant. Now back to the Chong Ek Genocidal Center. It's called the killing field. In fact, in Cambodia, across the length and breadth of the country, there are a lot of killing fields But the most prominent one is the killing field, which is located about 18 kilometers away from Phnom Penh. It's a place where the captives were brought by the Cambodian Communist Party. They were made to work like slaves, and almost all of them were killed at the end of it. And hence the name, the killing field. The way they were killed, the bullets were expensive, so mostly they were killed by using other kind of weapons like pickaxes and even blunt weapons. Because the bullets were expensive, they used to be hit on their head. And the children, I know it's very disturbing, but it's a fact, and I have to include it here. The children were killed, the infants were killed by smashing their heads against the trees. And everything is there, and you feel that it's very, very fresh. Maybe the fact that it's just 4 decades old is very recent, and that's one of the reasons why you probably feel the pain even more. And you get to see human skulls, you get to see human bones, you get to see everything that tells you a tale about the kind of horror and the kind of torture and the sufferings the people of Cambodia had to go through in the hands of their own people. So in the name of communism, in the name of bringing egalitarianism, it was an absolute torture. And it is estimated that around 2 million people died in the process. And that is in a period from 1975 to 1979. The Khmer Rouge killed about 2 million people officially, but when I was there, I was told that the real number is probably twice as much. Which means we're talking about 4 million people. That is almost 1/4 of the country's total population. Unimaginable it is, isn't it? So I was there, and it took me a long time to regain my composure. I remember coming back. So from killing fields, I went to the S21 prison. There were a lot of prisons, but S21 was considered the most cruel of all the prisons. And the numbers that I'm going to give you will substantiate why I'm saying this. 20,000 inmates. During the rule, 20,000 inmates went in, and only 7 of them, 7 adults survived at the end of it. We're talking about a period from 1975 to 1979. So out of 20,000 people, only 7 survived. Everybody else died in the process. So that's a kind of, these are some of the pictures. It's pretty difficult to get pictures of this, but then I managed to get a few, and quite disturbing. But the feeling that I had was like, I thank God, I thanked Almighty for being in a country and being in a society which gave me the freedom to do what I want to do. And there's a reason why I say this. Why did the Communist Party of Cambodia, under the leadership of Pol Pot, kill so many? Anybody they suspected, anybody with a remote suspicion of being against their policies and their principles. And they included artists, they included poets and writers, businessmen, teachers, and they didn't spare even a single person wearing glasses, wearing spectacles. And thank God I wasn't in Cambodia, and I'm sure that I wouldn't have been alive to tell you the story. Now that's the kind of torture that you're talking about. And there is this man called Dutch who was in charge of the prison, and most of these cruel acts were led by him. So he ordered the executions, he ordered how, he was very specific about how to kill certain people, and he was probably the person overseeing everything. So what you right now see is the photograph of this person who's called Dutch. So the visit to the killing field, and subsequently the S21 prison and the museum that is attached to it. And I remember I had to get back to my hotel, and I had to take a plunge into the pool, and I had to have a few drinks, and I had to go out to be normal again. But even after 3 years of my visit, it still lingers somewhere deep down in my heart. And that's the impact, that's the effect the history of Cambodia has on you. But having said that, Cambodia is a beautiful country. Geographically, the landscape is just beautiful. And of course, there's another side of the country, which is the Siem Reap. We're talking about the famous Angkor Wat. And witnessing the sunrise there is something, as a sight, a real sight to behold. So it's beautiful, the Angkor Wat. And I remember we had to wake up at 4 o'clock to be there by 5. And I'm sure the young kid behind me is probably seeing an Indian for the first time. And the temples, the huge architecture marvel that it offers. And that's quite amazing. That's a different side of Cambodia. And then the Cambodian people and their hospitality. Great hospitality. They always greet you with absolute warmth and a smile. And the food markets, the food is terrific. The drinks, everything. And that's my friend Atul, and that's the happiest I had seen him in a long, long time. And Cambodia offers everything that a tourist needs. The people, the places, the beauty, the natural beauty of the country. But to me, Cambodia will always be about its people. Everybody is warm, everybody is pleasant. And today's generation, I think they're trying to move on, and maybe the new generation wouldn't have the same kind of impact as the previous generations do. But it's hard to overcome that. And you see a tinge of sadness in every Cambodian's eyes. They look resolute. They want to put their past behind them and move on. But somewhere deep down, you can still see that pain of tragedy and the misery and the horror that the country went through. And I feel that's a collective psyche of the country. So if you love people, if you love to know the history, if you love to be there and feel it, and if you also love the architectural marvel that the Angkor Wat and the other temples surrounding that is, I think your next holiday has to be to Cambodia. So if you haven't planned it, plan it. And I'm sure for everybody who wants to travel the world and see the world and see the best of what the world has to offer, Cambodia should be right there at the top of your list. Thank you for watching.